It's a pleasure to join you today. Yes, indeed, my name is Tony Clamp, and until the end of 2021, I was the director of the Green Climate Fund's private sector facility. And as you may know, the Green Climate Fund was established by the United Nations to provide climate-related project funding in developing countries, and is an example of a public agency which provides investment to support the delivery of blended finance. Blended finance, what is it? Well, it's typically considered to be the use of subsidized and often public money to support the mobilization or raising of private, some say institutional or commercial money for investment where that investment would otherwise not be available and not be provided. That subsidized money is usually provided by governments, public agencies, philanthropies, concessional terms in the form of so-called subordinated, or some say first loss facilities, in the form of debt, equity, grants, guarantees, or other forms of financial support, which provide the comfort which commercial investors or lenders typically need to make their commitments, including very much in the water and sanitation sector. Blended finance, it's often used to support investment in developing countries, including in Africa, where the availability of that critical commercial or private money really is not always available, certainly not available on acceptable terms, viable terms. It's often used to support investment in sectors which are economically challenging, and that includes the water and sanitation sectors, where I've worked extensively over many years. Partly because the tariffs may be considered too low, for example, or the investment considered too high to attract that private money. And of course, sanitation in particular can be very challenging in that respect. And funding the development of the necessary infrastructure to support that on a commercial basis is difficult, and blended finance can help. Thanks very much, Cara. Yes. I guess, first of all, it is worth noting how it actually works. So we talked about blended finance, and I just wanted to give first of all a conceptual example and then a very real example. So an example of blended finance may be where the development agency, the public agency, provides, say, 25% of all the funding that's needed, and then the bank or other private investors for that water or sanitation project provide 75%. So that's just an example of how it might work. But of course, providing that 25% mobilizes or allows that additional money to flow. So that's one benefit. It might be in a country which doesn't really have a necessary track record to do it a different way. One example, so in 2021 and indeed 22, the Green Climate Fund committed $145 million to support the establishment of a new fund, almost $1 billion, $855 $1 million, I should say, which was dedicated, quite a new initiative, to delivering projects in water, sanitation, also in the wider ocean, so-called ocean sector, across 19 developing countries, of which 11 were in Africa. They actually subsequently increased that number significantly. The fund was called, and is called, Climate Investor II. It's managed by a joint venture between the Dutch Development, or so-called Entrepreneurial Development Bank, FMO, and a private South African-based fund manager. And that fund provides investment support to help prepare projects for commercial funding, and then to support their construction and operations. That's very much a real and current thing. In fact, the early results, they have approximately 8 projects, including I think 5 in Africa, are already underway. Sanitation is a more challenging sector. That's very much part of their remit. So it includes, as an example, the so-called ocean sector. Could be fishing even related, but very much the majority in the water and sanitation sector. So I guess you know what where does it all go from here? Well, blended finance is a developing concept. I think it's increasingly recognised that scarce public money. Everybody knows that's a valuable commodity, but it's an example of how it can mobilise the so-called millions and trillions available, but very much in developing countries in these critical sectors which are hard to finance, including water and definitely the sanitation sector.